Nobody is broke because they lack information. The internet has made sure of that. Every strategy, every framework, every financial principle ever discovered is available to anyone with a phone and 30 seconds to search. And yet, most people will die without ever building real wealth, not because the path is hidden, but because the truth about that path is something most people are not willing to face. Machiavelli never wrote a book about money, but he wrote something far more valuable. He wrote about human nature, about power, about the invisible forces that separate the people who shape the world from the people the world shapes. And buried inside his cold, precise observations about princes and power is a wealth philosophy so brutally simple, so uncomfortably accurate that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So let's tear it open, because what Machiavelli understood about wealth is not what you have been taught. And what you have been taught is exactly why most people stay exactly where they are. Here is the first truth, and it is going to sting. Most people are not poor because of bad luck. They are poor because of bad thinking, not bad intelligence, bad thinking. There is a difference. The world is filled with extraordinarily intelligent people who are completely broke, and it is filled with people of average intelligence who have built extraordinary lives. Machiavelli watched this same paradox play out in every court he ever entered. The most educated advisors sometimes made the most disastrous decisions. The most decorated generals sometimes led their armies into the worst defeats. Why? Because intelligence without strategic thinking is just the ability to fail more articulately. Strategic thinking, Machiavellian thinking, is something different. It is the ability to see reality as it actually is, not as you wish it were. And when you apply that lens to wealth, the picture it reveals is almost shockingly simple. Wealth does not flow to the most talented. It does not flow to the most hardworking. It does not flow to the most deserving. Wealth flows always, consistently, without exception, to the person who controls something other people need. That is it. That is the entire game. Control something others need, and the money will follow as naturally as water follows gravity. Now ask yourself honestly, what do you currently control? Not what can you do. Not what are you good at. What do you control that other people cannot easily get somewhere else? If the answer is nothing, that is not a talent problem. That is a positioning problem. And positioning, unlike talent, can be changed. Machiavelli was obsessed with what he called Fortuna, the unpredictable forces of fate, luck, and circumstance that shape every life. And he made an observation about Fortuna that changed everything I ever believed about wealth. He said that fortune favors the bold, but not in the way motivational posters mean it. Ask yourself honestly, what do you currently control? Not what can you do, not what are you good at. What do you control that other people cannot easily get somewhere else? If the answer is nothing, that is not a talent problem. That is a positioning problem. And positioning, unlike talent, can be changed. He said that fortune favors the bold, but not in the way motivational posters mean it. He meant something colder and more precise. He meant that the world is in constant motion. Circumstances change, markets shift, industries collapse, and new ones rise from the wreckage. And in those moments of change, those chaotic, uncomfortable, terrifying moments where nobody is certain what comes next, the person who moves first, who acts with decisiveness while everyone else is paralyzed by fear, that person captures the opportunity before the window closes. Most people wait for certainty before they act. Machiavelli would call that a fatal error, because certainty, in a world that never stops moving, is a destination that never arrives. The people who build wealth are not the ones who waited until every variable was known. They are the ones who moved with incomplete information, with courage dressed up as strategy, and took the ground while others were still debating whether to stand up. But here is where the twist comes in, and this is the part most people miss entirely. Machiavelli did not believe in recklessness. He had zero admiration for the person who charges forward without preparation, without observation, without understanding of the terrain. That was not boldness to him. That was stupidity wearing a confident face. What he believed in was prepared boldness, the kind of action that looks spontaneous from the outside, but is built on a foundation of deep observation, patient study, and ruthless self-honesty. The lion and the fox together. Strike like a lion, but only after you have already thought like a fox. In the context of wealth, this means one specific thing: know your arena before you enter it. Most people fail financially, not because they did not try hard enough, but because they tried hard in the wrong direction. They worked with ferocity inside systems that were never designed to make them wealthy. They climbed ladders, leaned against the wrong walls. They spent decades being excellent at something that the market never valued at the level they needed. Machiavelli would look at this and say, you studied the wrong thing, not the skill, the system. Study the system first, then master the skill inside it. There is another principle buried deep in Machiavelli's thinking that applies to wealth with terrifying accuracy. He observed that a prince who relies entirely on the generosity of others, on the goodwill of people who can withdraw it at any moment, is the most vulnerable prince in any kingdom. His survival depends on something outside his control, and anything outside your control can be removed without warning and without apology. Now translate that to your financial life. If your income depends entirely on one employer who can let you go tomorrow, you are that prince. If your business depends entirely on one client who could walk away next month, you are that prince. If your financial survival rests on a single platform, a single market, a single relationship, you are that prince. Machiavelli's most urgent warning for anyone who wants lasting wealth is this: never let your survival depend on the continued goodwill of a single source. Diversify your control. Build multiple streams, not because the advice sounds sophisticated, but because concentration of dependency is the single fastest path to financial collapse. The people who never have to worry about money are not the people who earn the most. They are the people who have built enough independent structures that no single decision by someone else can destroy them. That is financial sovereignty. And it is built not by working harder inside someone else's system, but by slowly, strategically, sometimes painfully building your own. Now here is the hardest truth in all of Machiavelli's wealth philosophy, the one that explains why most people read about money their entire lives and never actually build it. Knowledge without execution is entertainment. Machiavelli had no patience for the person who understood everything and did nothing. He had watched too many brilliant men in Florence debate endlessly about the ideal structure of a republic, while their city crumbled around them. Philosophy without action, he believed, was the most elegant form of cowardice. It gives you the feeling of progress without the risk of failure. It lets you stay in the safe territory of thinking without ever having to step into the dangerous territory of doing. The moment you act, truly act, not plan to act, not prepare to act, but actually move, you expose yourself to judgment, to failure, to the possibility that you were wrong. And that exposure is exactly what most people spend their lives avoiding. They read one more book, they take one more course, they plan one more spreadsheet, anything that feels like movement without requiring the terrifying vulnerability of actually being in the arena. Machiavelli would strip that pattern down to its bones and call it what it is: fear, not stupidity, not laziness, fear. Fear of being seen trying and failing, fear of discovering that you gave everything and it still was not enough. Fear of the identity collapse that comes when you bet on yourself and lose. But here is what he would also say: that fear is the price of admission. Everyone who has ever built anything real has paid it. The question is not whether you will be afraid. The question is whether you will act anyway, with preparation, with strategy, with eyes open to the reality of the arena you are entering, and whether you will adjust when the first plan fails instead of retreating back into the comfortable paralysis of planning, because plans always fail. The first version of every successful thing that ever existed looked nothing like its final form. Machiavelli knew this. The prince who could not adapt when circumstances shifted was the prince who fell, but the prince who kept his ultimate objective fixed while remaining flexible about the path, that prince endured. That prince built something that lasted. Wealth works the same way. The destination is fixed, the path is negotiable. Stay married to the outcome. Stay ready to divorce the strategy the moment it stops serving you. And so here is the final truth, the one Machiavelli spent his entire life circling, the one that ties every observation he ever made about power and fortune and human nature into a single, sharp, unignorable point. The world does not owe you wealth. It does not distribute prosperity based on effort, or virtue, or need, or time served. It distributes it based on value delivered, position held, and timing seized. The person who understands this stops waiting for fairness and starts engineering outcomes. They stop asking why the system does not reward them and start asking what the system rewards, and then they build that, not because they have abandoned their principles, but because they understand that in order to protect the things they love, in order to build the life they were meant to build, they must first learn to operate inside the world as it actually is. Getting rich is brutally simple. Not easy, never easy, but simple. Control something others need. Move before certainty arrives. Build independence from single points of failure. Execute relentlessly on what you study. Adapt when the path breaks. And never, not for a single comfortable, convenient moment, confuse knowing the way with actually walking it. Machiavelli watched empires rise on these principles. He watched them collapse when people forgot them. The only question left is which side of that story you are going to be on.